so much for hosting.
Sure.
We have a lot of work to do in Allegheny County, as many of you know. We have an outrageous number of people locked up, incarcerated both in state prison and the county jail. We are prosecuting children as adults and sending them to state correctional facilities to be assaulted and indoctrinated into the world of criminal behavior. We have 50% of the Allegheny County jail is black, despite the fact that only 12% of the population here is. And we have every single child that was tried as an adult by the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office who was sentenced to state prison was African American. We have incredible racial disparity. We are wrecking the future generations of Allegheny County by subjecting them to the trauma of the criminal justice system and subjecting their entire families to the criminal justice system. We are ripping families apart by incarcerating fathers and mothers, and it's all unnecessary. I've been a public defender for 30 years, and I know you can't believe that, but I have been a public defender for 30 years, and over that course of that time, trying all different kinds of cases for all different kinds of people, I have noticed that the one common theme through most of the cases, or most of the charges, from retail thefts all the way up to homicides, is that people just have a need that either isn't being met or hasn't been met in the past. Drug addiction, homelessness, poverty, joblessness, mental illness. And if we address those issues when people were in the juvenile justice system or when they were young adults, we would not have the hideous violent crime that compromises 15% of the crime in this county. So 85% of the crime here is nonviolent crime. Those are the people that are locked up senselessly and needlessly. And if we could divert them out of the criminal justice system and use our resources and our money and our energy towards fighting the illegal gun trafficking and the opioid epidemic, what a difference we could make. And what a difference it would make for those people that would be raised up and healed and redeemed with treatment rather than pounded down with a criminal conviction. The current district attorney's office has what they call diversionary programs, which aren't true diversionary programs. When you go through that program, it's because you've pled guilty. So we are lifting people up only to smack them down with a criminal conviction, which means they can't get public housing, they can't get jobs, they can't get loans, they can't get into schools, they can't get into the trade unions. If we want to help people to become members of society that we can support and that produce something for the rest of the community, we have to treat them and divert them from the criminal justice system. And we really need to focus first on children. The current district attorney's office overcharges, and that's one of the reasons that we have children that are ending up with criminal records. And I love this example, and I give it all the time because I think it pretty succinctly demonstrates a lot of the problems that are going on with the charging decisions. Say you have a 16-year-old kid who thinks he's hilarious, and having raised two of them, they all think they're hilarious, right? So he's running around with his friends, and he runs past someone, and he grabs a cell phone out of their hand and throws it in the trash can, and keeps going, and they all yuck it up. We all know that's probably a disorderly conduct or a very minor, petty offense, and that kid just needs something to do. He maybe needs to go to school. Maybe he needs to go to baseball practice. He needs something to do, and his family needs the support to help him find those things to do. But in our current district attorney's office, that's a robbery, it's a theft, it's a simple assault, it's a disorderly conduct. So because there are lists of crimes that have to be charged as an adult, that kid goes right to the adult system. He's charged as an adult with a robbery. And the only way to get out of the adult system is A, go to trial and win, or B, accept some sort of plea to a lesser offense and go back to juvenile court. So you're forcing that kid to avoid prosecution in adult court by pleading guilty to something. Or an aggravated assault, or one of the other crimes that have to be charged as an adult. The the legislature has said that these are the list of crimes where a juvenile has to be charged as an adult. The district attorney has the option of fighting the defense attorney's efforts to send a case back to juvenile court, or just acquiescing and saying, do whatever you think is right, Judge. Most of the time in Allegheny County, the district attorney's office fights every one of those decisions. And so those children are all subjected to the adult criminal justice system. Well, I shouldn't say that. 80 out of 100 of the children that were charged as adults in Allegheny County were black. 100%, as I said before, of the kids that actually ended up going to state prison were black. There are choices made every day in that district attorney's office that not only demonstrate a gross disregard for the racial inequalities that exist, that they perpetuate racial inequality. What we really need is to look at every single case. There's the Vera Institute has done this in other jurisdictions. They've gone into district attorney's offices. They've looked at every plea offer. They've checked the race of the person, the socioeconomic status. And only when you know where the problem is can you solve the problem. You need to be transparent. You need to open up your files so that we can see and they can solve the problem. The district attorney's office can only solve the problem if they identify it. There are also problems with transparency in that office with regard to civil forfeiture. I don't know how many people are familiar with what that is, but say they arrest a big drug dealer and he's been selling out of his car or selling out of his house. They will forfeit the car or the house because the person can't prove that they used legitimate funds to purchase it. The district attorney's office liquidates that property usually and then does something with the money. There is no accounting currently of how much money is taken in by the DA's office in civil forfeiture, and there's no accounting of where it goes. And that's one of the first things that I will do as district attorney is to be transparent so that the people that I work for, which is the people of Allegheny County, know what I'm doing. You have to be accountable to the people. And I will also make sure that the police are accountable to the people. Our current district attorney's decision to engage in an incredible conflict of interest and make a decision of whether or not to investigate and prosecute police officers is borderline unethical. If I were the district attorney, I would advocate with other progressive legislators and other progressive DAs for legislation in Harrisburg that would form a totally separate and independent unit to deal with police complaints of misuse of force or actual crimes. The district attorney has to have a good working relationship with the police, particularly if you want them to engage in this diversionary process. So I'm going to ask the police to help to implement every single one of the programs that I'm interested in or that is in my platform. So if I want you to help me and I need to work closely with you, certainly I'm not going to be responsible for investigating you and prosecuting you. That should be independent. But until such time as that can happen, because we all know legislation takes time and money and energy and effort, I will form an independent unit within the district attorney's office, and it will have two purposes basically. One is conviction integrity. One of the problems, and I know I'm delving into awfully technical, or not awfully technical, but very specific policies, but sometimes there are advances in forensic science that the district attorney's office doesn't keep up with. And I'll give you an example. Like if you've ever watched Law and Order, SVU, there's always a bite mark, right? There's always a bite on the victim that they miraculously match to the dental records or the cast of the perpetrator's team. FBI, every forensic science association said that's junk science. We need to go back and look at every case where someone was convicted using that type of science. Because there may be somebody locked up in a state correctional facility that was convicted based on science that's not valid. It's irresponsible to allow them to sit there. Currently, the district attorney's office opposes almost every request for people to go back and retest items for DNA. Because DNA, we've made a lot of advances in DNA science in the last 20 years. There are people sitting incarcerated who just say, retest the evidence. Why would you oppose that? If you're for fundamental fairness and for making sure that your convictions are valid and good convictions, you would be willing to open up your files. There was a very interesting bit of testimony in one of my last homicide cases. The district attorney's office used an expert in DNA, and when you have a mixture of DNA, when it's more than 2 people, when it's 3 people, say they swab a doorknob or a gun, and there's a mixture of DNA that may come from 3 or more people. Our county crime lab can't give any probability that, say, my DNA is within that mixture. But there's a man from Pittsburgh that has developed a computer program. It's called probabilistic genotyping. We fight it all the time because he won't tell us how the program works. You know, for all we know, he puts the information in a paper bag and shakes it up and comes out with probability. But that's a whole other issue. What I am telling you that story about is to point out that while he was testifying against my client on behalf of the prosecution on a case, he happened to mention that, and he is very proud of his accomplishments, he happened to mention that while the district attorneys love him, he was confused by the fact that he had offered to use his computer program to go back and look at every single one of their old DNA cases to see if mistakes had been made or if he could refine the results. And the DA's office said no. So this guy was good enough for the DA to use to try to convict people, but they said no to him going back to see if potentially mistakes had been made in the past with regard to DNA. This is your current district attorney's office, who's interested in highest grade of crimes, greatest length of incarceration, and absolutely disinterested and disengaged from the fact that there may be people who are incarcerated and convicted of crimes that they didn't commit. Because I've been doing this so long, I do see a lot of district attorneys, and it made me really sad when one of the younger ones who had just left was talking to me about my running for DA. And he said, you know, sometimes I wonder, like when I'm home at night, how many people I've actually convicted that might not have committed a crime. And no DA's office and nobody who works in that office should ever, ever wonder that. There are certain, Sure. Thank you. I am talking awfully long, aren't I?
No, I just didn't want to walk in front of you.
That's fine. I could go on for hours and hours and hours, then I won't because I know it gets tedious. Soon, all of my policy and all of the things that I think we can accomplish together will be up on the website. I will tell you that this job will not be a difficult job because I've read the University of Pittsburgh Institute of Politics report where justice-related services, the judges, the U.S. Attorney, foundations, experts in addiction, experts in psychiatry, all support the kind of reform that's in my platform. But when I went and asked the people who participated in the criminal justice task force why this progress wasn't occurring to a man or woman, the answer was, we're all trying to work around the district attorney. If we had a district attorney who was willing to listen to experts in addiction, psychiatry, foundations, mental illness, bond people, justice-related services people, people in the community, people in the scientific community, we could reform and make our system one that's legitimate and one that the citizens of Allegheny County could rely on. And then you would know that if someone was convicted of a crime, that was one that they actually had committed, and that whatever punishment was a just and fair one based on the circumstances of themselves and the crime. So, knowing that all this is possible, I'm asking you all to help me make this happen. Join with me and the rest of the volunteers and the rest of the staff that are all working hard to get the signatures to get me on the ballot. As you know, Steve Zappala's money is endless, He has union money and I guess money from all the people that he's given civil forfeiture money to, and all the retired police officers that he gives jobs to. So we do need money. We need physical people to knock on doors and make sure that this message is heard and that people know we can have change. The change that we want and the change that we can have will make us all safer, because it will keep people out of the revolving door of the criminal justice system, and we will be able to focus on the really violent crime that endangers us all. So my road is the road to safety, it's the road to humanity, and it's the road to true justice for everybody in Allegheny County. So please, please help me make it happen. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
So does anyone have any questions?
I think you nailed it.
Oh, all right.
That wasn't the question, though.